What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Yee Yee podcast. Parker Smith here, joined with the two other Smith brothers. Granger
My
and
muscle's the biggest.
Tyler. If you're watching on YouTube,
Am I the strongest brother?
looks like it. You can comment below who's the strongest Smith brother. We're here because it's release week of your book, Granger. How are you feeling, man?
Crazy. I actually looked this morning so I could send to Amber, but I found out that Tyler, if you remember, the proposal for this book was January 2022. So at that point, in January 2022, it had a title, it had 12 chapter outlines, some like pictures, stats about me. That's what we started pitching to publishers.
Seemed so far away at the time.
It seemed so far away. That's my point. Yeah.
So it's release week. Before we get into that, there's a few things that are cycling around the internet right now that are super popular. Number one,
Try that in a small town.
try that in a small town. I don't remember the last time a song had this much flack. What are your thoughts on that, Granger, in particular?
I think my first thought when you said that is that you're just forgetting. You easily forget. Stuff like this happens all the time, and it sizzles up and then it just sizzles back down, but we forget it. I mean, the whole Lil Nas thing was like massive, you know. And what was that song? The Billy Ray Cyrus thing.
Oh, Horses in the Back?
Yeah.
Old Town Road.
Old Town Road. That was like that stuff like that rises up and then
I don't know how
You mean rises up controversial? Like
Yeah.
Being, like, what was the
yeah,
controversy?
because then he came out to be like a Satan worshiper or whatever.
He also had specific songs that he released after that of him, like
That wasn't during the song,
doing
though.
stuff with
Like
Satan.
it is. I feel like Jason just came out with a song and it was like, boom, controversy. Popular.
So I know Jason. I've known Jason since 2000 and 1999 probably 1999. So I've known Jason for a long time, way before he had any popularity. I knew him before Record Deal. Tyler remembers the Michael Knox days. Me and him would like go to the mall and hang out. He as a teenager, he was like, just a small town Georgia kid, just wanted to make it in the music business. That's all he cared about. And I've always liked him. I actually auditioned and made his band as a steel guitar player. Did you know that?
No.
This is about 2002, 2003, something like that. No, it's like 3 or 4. 2004 probably. I'll go with that. He had a record deal, and they were going to put out a first album. And so Michael Knox, his producer, called me because I played steel guitar, and he said, "Hey, will you come and audition just officially? We want you in the band, but just make it official." So I went and auditioned with Jason with Why, the song Why, Amarillo Sky, Hicktown, yeah, and a couple others. And all of it ended up being hits. But anyway, audition, made it, and then we're going to go out on the road. It was like that next Monday, we're getting on the bus and going to do a House of Blues on the East Coast somewhere. And I called Michael, and it was right around the time I really wanted to go be an artist. And so I called Jason, and I just said, "Man, I love what you're doing. I love that this is happening for you. You deserve all of this that's about to come." Because I thought the songs were hits anyway. And I said, "But this is a turning point in my life that if I go with you now on this bus," which that was like a new thing. Buses were new to him. He was leasing a bus. "If I go with you, it's a turning point in my life that I might never get back. And this is a catalyst that I want to move to Texas, and I want to be an artist too. I want to do the same thing you're doing." And of course he's like, "Dude, I totally understand, totally respect it." Michael, the producer's a little mad, but totally understand it. And that's like when Jason and I split. We were pretty close until then. And what my point is, I've known Jason for 25 years almost, and I know his heart First of all, I know that all this accusations about their stupid racism stuff and like inciting violence is ridiculous. He doesn't think that deep. Like that's not. He doesn't go there. So I could vouch for him in that aspect. I've just known him forever. So if that's how you want to lead that conversation, I don't know what your question is.
I was just curious on your thoughts on it. Do you think that the reaction to it was overblown by the general public, or do you feel like as a country artist you should kind of just stay out of those sensitive issues?
No, I think it's totally normal. I think it's always the pendulum. Somebody picked it up on the left and swung it as far as they could. Someone on the right noticed that it was swinging left and grabbed it and swung it back to their side. That's just
what we do these days.
It's what we do.
Yeah, like Granger said, Jason hadn't changed. He's just doing what he does, like everybody living their life. Like song he would have put out in 2004, but now in 2023, everybody wants to just blow it up and make it something it's not.
Do you think there's a difference now in people's reactions to that song 20 years ago versus today? Like, do you think that it would have gotten that reaction in 2004?
No,
definitely not.
I'm just wondering if that kind of stuff did happen. I don't think so. The big loser in the whole game, all of this, the biggest loser is CMT. Because the left, they get their glory and they get to take down something. The right gets their glory and they get to rise it up to the charts. But CMT is in the middle, and they're just stupid. For them to do that and for them to get involved in that, they're the only ones that are going to lose, because now artists are going to start. It's not going to be cool. I'll put it this way, because Tyler knows it's not going to be cool anymore to have your song on CMT at all. It used to be the pinnacle. It used to be amazing back in the 90s. We used to watch CMT with Minnie, and it was called CMT Country Music Till the Cows Come Home. That was their motto, and it played country music videos, and it was amazing. If you got on it, you were a star. Then when Tyler and I were running songs up the charts, every time we put out a music video, the publicist would be like, okay, first step is CMT wants to debut it on their website. And we were always like, that's a dumb idea. Let's just go to YouTube. And like, no, it's credibility. CMT's got power. They've got leverage. So let's do the first 24 hours on CMT.com, whatever.
You're really dogging CMT right now.
Because I think they're in the wrong. I think it was a big mistake by CMT to get involved.
You know what it does, ironically, with CMT doing that? And I don't understand why people don't get this. I don't understand why people don't realize that they're only helping the song. Because when they say we're pulling it, what does that do? It creates headlines. It creates controversy. It creates eyeballs. It creates... Literally, you texted me. We were in a group text. Have y'all heard this Jason Aldean song? Somebody texted me that. And I was like, no. And somebody said, CMT pulled it down. Somebody said, it's in the media. Somebody said something. I was like, well, I wasn't going to watch it before, but now I'm going to go give Jason a view and a stream. And everybody's doing that across the country. So back to if it came out in 2004, would it have caused a controversy? We don't really know, kind of like Granger was saying. I would guess that it wouldn't. But I would also guess that the song wouldn't be a hit if all this stuff wasn't happening. It's like, to my point, all the people that think are like, we should take it down, we shouldn't play it, we shouldn't put it on the radio, we shouldn't do this, is only help. Same thing with the Morgan Wallen stuff that we've all seen. You know, same thing, controversy, he gets in trouble, people just go stream him and support him.
So take this as an example. Somebody calls Morgan and he goes, hey, CMT wants a favor for something. Morgan's going to be like, no, I'm definitely not doing anything for CMT. And a lot of artists, I'm out of the game now. I'm no longer considered a country music artist. If I was, I would be the same thing. I'd be like, you want me to do a favor for CMT, who turned their back on my buddy for a non-reason, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It hurt that company.
Will other artists have the backbone, though, to stand up for what's right? They
will now, because now it makes even a small artist, you have the possibility of looking like Bud Light, like you're drinking a Bud Light, if you go on CMT. So they're going to be like, no, I better not do that.
It's funny, the left is constantly looking for things. They're sniffing things out to try to be able to stand up for what they believe in so that they can take it down because it's offensive, because it's going to victimize somebody. And then you have the right, when the woke starts to take something down or try to cancel it, the right also just completely pounces too. And so it's just interesting to see that dynamic.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I don't have the facts in front of me, but I could almost guarantee you, Jason didn't write the song. He didn't find the song. He didn't even know about the song till his producer brought it in and said, hey, let's record it. That's not dogging Jason at all. That's just a system. He's been doing it for a long, long time. There was a long list of songs, and as they went down the list, Jason will have the final say, but he didn't bring the song to the table. He just
Which you and me did for years.
Yeah. So Jason would just look at it and be like, that sounds cool to me, man. And he sang it, and he walked away from it.
And guess what? He's right by doing it because it's a smash now.
Yeah.
And he's succeeding because of the song success.
My point is, he wasn't like an advocate, like, you know what's going to really wrinkle some feathers. You know how we could really make a jab at the left is by, that was none of that.
Yeah.
He just heard it and was like, I agree with that song. Let's record it. That was it.
So the left thinks that he has some secret agenda.
Yes.
The right then portrays him as an American hero who had this good agenda. And in reality, he's
Neither
just chilling.
one are right.
Cool. So moving on to your book. It's called Like a River. Why did you write this book? You're a country music artist. You're not an author. What's going on? What's going through your mind when you had the idea to write this thing?
Tyler remembers because he's the first one I called.
Is this just a moneymaker?
Yeah, man.
Something to pay the bills now that you're out of music?
Tyler was there, and I called him. There's been several things in my life where I thought about it, and then
We had the conversation right here, actually. You were sitting on the couch, and I said, call Ryan or Ed, or call both.
Yeah. So there's been several things in my life where I've thought about something, and then seminary was one example. And then one day I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm all in. I have to. So one day I woke up and I was all in on the book. And I had even been writing pieces of it before, but it was like just like the chapter about Dad. I'd already written several pieces of that chapter already in years before. So I put it all together and I called Tyler and I said, I want to put out a book about Riv and this whole story. And Tyler said, well, first thing to do is call Ed Milet or Ryan Mickler, because those guys, Ryan just put out a book and Ed has put out a lot. So either one of those guys reach out today. And that's what I did. And that's how it started.
But what you said, you had been thinking about it for a while. You woke up that morning. Like, what was the message that you felt compelled to share in particular?
The story of redemption in my life. And it finally, because I think for a long time, the story didn't feel ready to tell. It wasn't cooked enough in the oven. And it's obviously my story is not finished yet. Still, none of our stories are finished yet. But it felt like this part of my life had a bow on it and it was ready to tell.
What was the writing process like for you, for someone who has written music for a long time? What was it like writing a book? Because a lot of people would see this and they probably just think that you got a ghostwriter, you came up with maybe the chapters, and then someone else just kind of filled in the details. What was the writing process like for this book, and did you write it?
It was actually the opposite of what you just said. When I got with our book agent, they said, what's your biggest concern with this book? And I said, my biggest concern is where to start. How do I start? Like, you look at a blank page and that could be the scariest thing for any creative piece of work. It's like the blank page. So I told several people at the agency, they're like, what are your concerns? This is your first book. You have questions for us. What do you need? And I said, I don't know where to start. And they said, great. That's what everyone says. Like, that's the most common question for a new author is, where do I start? So they set me up with a pastor, actually, named Ryan Wickerman. So I reached out to Ryan and he said, let's have coffee. So we met in downtown Georgetown at, was it Lamppost Coffee? And he had a laptop and he said, tell me everything. So I talked for 3 hours, and then we met again, and I talked for another 3 hours. We just drank coffee and I talked, just like this. And he went home and collected everything I said. And then what he did was he came in and he said, I think we start with chapter 1, go straight to the swimming pool. You lose Riv. I think we open the book. I think you start there.
Who can you tell people a little bit more who Ryan is and why the agency sent you to him? Did he write many books before, or
well, I don't really
because
know.
he was a pastor?
Or it's funny. I put in the acknowledgments at the very end. I put on here to Ryan Weckenman, you were the WD-40 that opened this rusty hinge. I cherish our original coffee chats discussing what direction and purpose this book would take. I needed someone to push me off my comfortable edge, and you did that with such pastoral grace.
Such a Yee analogy.
He's a pastor where?
It's called Red Rocks Church, I believe, in Austin. He's a pastor. So what the agency did, and they do this with all, especially new pastors, but most pastors in general, you set you up with someone that just goes, let me hear your story from the outside perspective, and I could tell you where to start. So he said, I think you start at chapter 1. It's called The Water's Edge. I think you start at the pool. And then he said, and then he wrote down these notes. It was like chapter 2 was Our Forever Home, something. I think that was a working title. And then let's go into your touring. Then let's go into self-help when it stops helping. And let's talk about your dad. The Dark Night of the Soul was Ryan's idea. He was like, man, I think you need to write the story, that dark night that you didn't want to tell anybody. I think that's a chapter. I highly encourage you to do it. Then the rebirth, then into the Phoenix story and the Maverick story. That was all Ryan laying out just a very loose outline saying, here, this is where I think the story is best told. You could change any of this you want. You could rearrange it, but I think you tell it in this order. Handed me that. So we took that basic idea, took it back to the agency. They agreed. The agency pitched it to publishers. Tyler and I did interviews with publishers until we ended up signing with HarperCollins because they agreed to this. And then after all of that, then I started writing.
Going back, we interviewed with a ton of publishers, and there was a lot of prayer, a lot of Zooms. And it wasn't just like, yeah, cool, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a process.
So all of that happened before I even started writing the book itself.
So,
but then it was easy because then I was like, okay, starting with first chapter, write about Riv in the pool. Second chapter, write about our home. Third chapter, write about touring, what touring looked like. It was just boom, boom, boom.
You mentioned that there's a chapter in there called the Dark Night of the Soul that you did not want to write about. Do you want to share anything about that?
I gave this to the band.
You might finish it yet?
I haven't asked them, but the other day I was somewhere in Iowa, and Sean walked up to me and his eyes were like glassy, lighting guy, and he goes, bro? I looked at him, I was like, bro? And he goes, just read about Boise. And I was like, oh. And he's like, huh. And he walked off.
That was it?
That's like all he could say. He just really didn't know what to say.
So he read it then?
He was right there at the Boise part, the Dark Night of chapter 7.
He just left it at that?
Oh, I think he said, I kind of want to give you a hug right now. And then he walked off.
It's interesting how people, and then you had Willie Robertson call you. It's interesting how people are like, so many people are struggling. Everybody's struggling. People watching this, me, Parker, Brian, everybody. And then you read something like that, and you're about somebody you care about. Like, I had no idea. It just kind of makes you flash back to, what could I have done? I don't think there's any way to like ever. I mean, what would you say? Like, be more grateful for your friends, your loved ones, like more present, more. How can I help you? Like, is there some sort of biblical, reference or scripture that could help all of us,
Well-
like, to be more caring for others?
I think part of it is these days in 2023, we have too many friends. I don't, and I mean that in terms of we are defining friends the wrong way. Like somebody might say, I've got 423 friends on Facebook or whatever. Well, instead of I've got 2 or 3 friends, like that know me and I know them. I think that's probably how it used to be 100 years ago and every year before that. But now we have too many casual friends. Angela Lampton, she was with me on the road in Kansas City. She was our old radio promo person. And I gave her the book, and she messaged me a couple days later and said, just read Dark Night of the Soul, and I'm sitting here bawling because I saw you 1 month before that.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that I might not have ever seen you again just is haunting me, and I can't get over it. And all I'm thinking is, read chapter 8. Read chapter 8. Just don't stop there. And so I was telling
It's all part of God's plan.
I was telling Marshall, our pastor, I was saying this, that so many people are calling me, are messaging me, are finding me and saying, I read chapter 7 and I'm haunted and I'm distraught and I'm crying. And my answer always is, read chapter 8. And Marshall's like, you need to have like a disclaimer when you hand people the books, like, don't call me till you read through chapter 8. Don't call me after chapter 7.
So if you're listening to this and you're extremely confused about what he's talking about,
Buy the book and read chapter 7.
There's a chapter in there, chapter 7, The Dark Night of the Soul, where Granger shares something that he hasn't shared with anybody in public about a certain, really, probably, would you say is the darkest night of your life?
Oh, yeah.
The darkest night of your life that happened in Boise on tour. And we'll leave it there. You guys check out the book and read chapter 7, and it's really crazy. And Granger will tell you to read chapter 8. Don't stop.
Don't stop there.
Don't stop after chapter 7. There's like 10 billion books in the world. Why should people care or read this one?
10 billion? Did you actually Google that?
Yeah. Nice. I looked it up on Wikipedia. Super reliable.
Could I pass that question to Tyler?
Why? Do you want me to answer?
Because I'm totally biased on it. I'm like, well, this is the most important piece of media I've ever put out. This is my story. This is about my family. This is about my death and my life and my son's death and my new son's life. So I'm very biased. I would say this is the greatest book ever. You have to get it. So I'm going to pass it to Tyler.
I mean, if you're really biased, I'm the second most biased person, or maybe third behind Amber. So were you going to say something, Bert?
I'm going to pass it to Parker then, because
he's the most.
You read it most
unbiased of
recent.
us.
Tyler and I were kind of involved it early, but you were in Washington, D.C. at Capitol Hill Baptist Church interning when I finished the manuscript and sent it to you, so you didn't get to read it right away.
Yeah, so I'd say, number one, just based on your life experience, it's really rare and just really fascinating to hear about. We always look up to people as humans. We look up to people who are successful. We look up to people who have made money, who have made fame, who have made it, who've gotten the status, the social credit. And your story is really rare and really interesting in that when you're reading that book, you get to see into your heart, into your mind of someone who has grinded all the way from the bottom, all the way to the top of the social hierarchy of status, of fame, of making it. And then now you're someone who has then willfully decided to step out of that world down into ministry, into something that you have found that is more important. And also, number two, you're someone who has experienced the death of your son, which is, when people go through grief, when they go through trial and suffering, there's something profound about the people who make it on the other side of that in this world. And the Bible says that that suffering then turns into endurance, and then endurance then turns into hope, right? What is it? Suffering to endurance, and then into hope. And so there's something profound about that. And then, so just your story in general. And then third is just your writing style is not overly academic. You're not trying to impress any scholars. It's
You're just really good at dumbing it down, brother.
you
Maybe you are pretty dumb.
you speak in a way that is interesting that everyone can understand. You're such a good storyteller.
So many people,
it's really good.
including myself, have said that they've read it like in a day or two, which to me, it's like, man, there's just not many books you can read like in a day or two. And it's not, I mean, it's a good length, but I just think it's, I don't know. I'd just be interested to hear, comment below the people watching this, because everybody that has kind of read it is pretty close to you and kind of knows the story. So maybe they're a little biased and maybe they're like, well, let me just read it. But some of the people that have read it, like even in this office that don't read books, I just think that that's a really good sign that it reads really well. I read books for a living, and I've finished this in 2 airplane flights.
Yeah, I think you read it in 6 hours.
I read it going wherever I was going, and then I read it, I think I left the next day and read it coming back or something.
And Amber did too. I think took about 6 hours.
And I think something important to add is that you don't necessarily have to have had loss or the death of someone really close to you to get something from the book. Do you agree with that? It's like this book is not only for people who are grieving about something.
Oh, for sure. In fact, I don't know many people that have been grieving that have read it yet, because it's, first of all, as we record this, it's not out yet. But it will be out by the time this video releases, this podcast. But I haven't seen people that have been hurting and needed it and read it yet. It's been just people on our team.
Cool.
So yeah, absolutely. I think I think there's a piece of it for every kind of person in every belief group that there is.
Cool. Like a River is out now. It's available anywhere where you buy books, online, in a store, Barnes & Noble, Walmart. It's out there. You guys check it out, and then let us know. Hopefully it's encouraging to you. Hopefully it gives you some perspective, and then ultimately gives you hope at the end of the day on how to find meaning in this life.
I could hear the questions now. Is there an audiobook?
Is there an audiobook?
Is it, well, first of all, is it on Kindle? Can I get it on Kindle, and can I get it on audiobook? Those are going to be 2 huge questions. The answer is yes and yes. Because this is the Yee podcast, and because most people that are listening to this podcast hopefully are supporters of the family and Yee, I will tell you as supporters what the publisher has told me. Audiobooks do not count towards bestseller list. So that's why I don't talk about it very much. Talk about getting this actual hardcover copy. But I personally love the audiobook. I loved making it and recording it and reading it. I think I cried on every chapter. I left it all in there. I didn't edit it out. It's very meaningful to me to be able to, quote unquote, perform the book by reading it. So yes, there's an audiobook. I hope you get it. But my real hope is, for the sake of the book getting on a bestseller list, which will get the book into more people's living rooms, which is what we want. Because some people buy just because it's on a list. So that's why we want the list. But for that sake, I would ask, get both. Get the audiobook. If you're an audiobook guy or girl, get that and the hardcover. I'll even sign this one if you don't want to read it. I'll sign it for you next time I see you, which will be soon. And then listen to the audiobook.
Speaking of, we should sign this one and give it away in the comments.
Okay.
So comment below if you want this. What should we say, like, to make them stand out? Like, maybe say, hey, I bought one already, or I bought one for a friend. I would love a signed one. And to Granger's point about the Audible not counting towards bestseller lists, another question a lot of people are going to ask is, will you be selling it on grangersmith.com or yee.com? And the answer to that is going to surprise most of y'all. It's not yet. We probably will eventually. But to Granger's point about Audible not counting to bestseller lists, neither does it count if we sell it on our store. And so the best way for you to support, this first week, August 1st through, the 5th is Friday. I think when did they say it ends? The August. Let's just say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Sunday night, midnight.
Sunday night, like Saturday, those first 6-7 days is just to go buy it. Grangersmith.com will have a link to, Amazon. It'll have a link to like Barnes & Noble. You can go to your local Barnes & Noble. You can go to your local Walmart, etc. And those all count. Like Granger said, if it can make that bestseller list, then it's going to kind of be like placed in the algorithm to show people that wouldn't have ever seen it before
Yes.
that will be able to buy it. And that means more people are exposed to the story, exposed to Jesus Christ, and more people are just going to know about it all. So,
And I would challenge all of you as Yee Nation people, listeners, podcast consumers, to buy 2 or 3 or 4 if you could afford it, because during that first week, that matters. Because you may think, I want to get one for me, and then later for Christmas, I want to buy a couple for people in my family. I would encourage you, go ahead and get those 2 or 3 extra now. Hold on to them for Christmas, just because this first week matters to us to get that number up for the bestseller list.
and you guys know how easy Amazon is. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's got their spot, but I just go to Amazon. You just do buy 3, buy 4.
Hit that quantity, 3, 4, and then hold on to it. Yeah, that's my request. I don't ask for much. We give you, this podcast is free. We give you a lot of free stuff. We don't ask for much, but if you buy this book, it really helps to spread a very important message. Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yee.
See you guys next time.